So as this axis builds between Turkey and Pakistan, both on India's eastern and western fronts, what should New Delhi do? How does India counter this new and emergent axis? I decode what these developments could mean for India's sovereignty and stability in the subcontinent, and what can India do to try and counter Turkey and Pakistan coming together. The geopolitical sands of South Asia are shifting yet again, and India must pay close attention. In the aftermath of the latest round of India-Pakistan hostilities between April and May, one regional alliance that has come into sharper focus than ever before. It is the growing strategic closeness between Pakistan and Turkey. What began as a slow diplomatic flirtation over the last decade has now transformed into a full-spectrum partnership. It encompasses defense, diplomacy, and even an Islamist ideology. At the center of this emerging axis are the two principals, Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. There is a convergence of their national interests and also their political interests. And this has profound implications for India as India seeks to redraw its red lines with Pakistan post-Operation Sindoor. Shehbaz Sharif's recent visit to Turkey, just weeks after the high-profile Operation Sindoor, which was India's cross-border anti-terror strikes into heartland Pakistan, was not merely a symbolic visit. It was his first overseas visit after the conflict, and tellingly, Turkey was also the last country that he visited before the Pahalgam terror attack on the 22nd of April. In fact, on the day of that attack, on the 22nd of April, the attack that claimed 26 Indian lives, Shehbaz Sharif was there in Turkey. There was a press conference that he did side by side with Erdogan, in which Erdogan gave unqualified support to Pakistan. Shehbaz, in this trip, was also accompanied by Pakistan's all-powerful military chief, General Asim Munir, who has now been elevated to the rare and highly symbolic rank of Field Marshal. This sends a signal that civil-military unity is there behind this reach out, may I say, to Ankara. This was more than just a courtesy call being given to a partner. This was a strategic reaffirmation of where Pakistan is placing its bets for the long term. Turkey, for its part, has been unequivocal in its embrace of Pakistan. Over the past month, India has named and shamed Turkey for supplying military equipment, including the Bayraktar TB2 drones, the Asus-Guard drone surveillance systems, all of which was used by Pakistan during the recent hostilities with India. Indian officials have conveyed strong diplomatic protests on this. They have warned Turkey against enabling cross-border terrorism. In retaliation, New Delhi has also taken a hard economic line. Contracts with Turkish firms like Celebi Aviation, which was responsible for ground handling operations in at least 9 major Indian airports, have been scrapped. Several bilateral deals between Turkey and India have also been put on indefinite hold. Now, this marks a significant turning point in India-Turkey ties, which have been deteriorating steadily over Erdogan's vocal support for Kashmir and also his Islamist populism. But the recent events go beyond just rhetoric. Ankara is now not just talking the talk, it is walking the walk when it comes to defense exports, strategic support to Pakistan on multiple fronts, including multilateral fora like the Organization of Islamic Countries, OIC, and the United Nations. The Turkish defense relationship with Pakistan has grown manifold in recent years. It has culminated in a number of big-ticket arms deals. Turkey is currently building 4 Milgem-class corvette naval warships for the Pakistan Navy. It's a $1.5 billion deal. The first of these ships, PNS Babur, was commissioned last year. The rest are scheduled for delivery by 2026. In parallel, Turkish defense firms are also helping Pakistan upgrade its existing naval and air defense systems with new electronics, radar systems, and drone integration. The Bayraktar drones, proven in the battlefields of Libya and Ukraine, were in fact deployed by Pakistan's military in Kashmir and along the line of control in the recent hostilities. These are not merely surveillance platforms, but these are fully armed UAVs which are capable of precision strikes. Their use in the recent flare-up between India and Pakistan was a watershed moment. It signals a qualitative shift in Pakistan's asymmetric warfare against India. And Turkey has a definitive role in enabling that asymmetric warfare. India's concern goes beyond weapons. Ankara is also emerging as Pakistan's primary political patron at a time when traditional Gulf allies like Saudi Arabia and the UAE are cooling off their support for Islamabad. In fact, both Saudi Arabia and the UAE have cultivated strong strategic and economic ties with India over the last 10 years. It's been driven by trade, energy security, and of course, there's a shared mutual interest in regional stability. In contrast, Erdogan's Turkey has positioned itself as a pan-Islamist power. It projects influence in the Muslim world from Gaza to Kashmir, and often it clashes with these Gulf monarchies like Saudi Arabia. For Pakistan, making this pivot to Turkey makes strategic sense. With both Saudi Arabia and the UAE increasingly unwilling to underwrite Pakistan's economy and also back it unconditionally on Kashmir, it is Turkey that offers both moral support and military hardware. Erdogan's own worldview, which is shaped by a neo-Ottoman view of the world and an Islamist revivalism, it dovetails very neatly with Pakistan's desire, one, to internationalize Kashmir, and two, to seek alternative sources of military and financial support. This deepening realignment has real consequences for India. The threat is not merely bilateral, but it's also regional. If Turkey continues to serve as Pakistan's primary arms supplier and its primary advocate on Kashmir, then India faces a two-front challenge, one of cross-border terrorism, another of international perception management. What's more worrying is the possible triangulation of ties between Turkey, Pakistan, and China. This loose triangulation could create a new bloc that is resistant to India's influence in the Muslim world. It could also push the Kashmir issue back onto global platforms like the United Nations and the OIC. The question is, how should India respond? First, diplomatically, India must build a coalition of its own. The warming of ties between India and Gulf countries must be consolidated further. It must be institutionalized, particularly with Saudi Arabia and UAE. Their unease with Turkey's ambitions can be leveraged to isolate Ankara within the Muslim world. India's relationship with Israel, which is now a key counterterrorism partner, must also be strategically projected. Second, economically, India should continue to apply selective pressure on Turkish interests in India. But this must be calibrated pressure. India should target those sectors where Turkish influence intersects with national security, whether it's aviation, defense, critical infrastructure. And third, on the military front, India must reassess its own UAV and counter-drone capabilities. If the Bayraktar drones are being used across the LOC, the Asus Guard are being used across the LOC, then India must develop, deploy, and if needed, even demonstrate its ability to detect, jam, and neutralize these threats. Indigenous drone programs, including the armed drones, must be fast-tracked. And lastly, India should not cede the ideological narrative. Turkey has been trying to project itself as the voice of the global Muslim community. India has a large and diverse Muslim population. It must highlight its own pluralism and its constitutional secularism as a counterpoint to Ankara's Islamist rhetoric. This includes proactive diplomacy with both OIC members and also a massive diaspora outreach.